What if the history of humanity could be told not through kings and empires, but through the edge of a blade, through the tip of an arrow, through the cold gaze of those who transformed violence into an art? Since the first man raised a stone against his brother, war has been a dark constant in our journey. But amid millions of nameless soldiers, some names echo through the centuries, whispered with a mixture of dread and admiration. They weren't just soldiers, they were forces of nature, killing machines forged in the fire of battle, whose lethality became legend. Today, we're going to open the annals of history to face, eye to eye, the deadliest warriors who ever walked the earth. Prepare yourself. The body count is about to begin. Our journey begins at the pulsing, cruel heart of the Roman Empire, the gladiator arena, a place where death was entertainment. And at the center of this circus of blood, one name rose above all others, not just as a champion, but as a symbol of rebellion: Spartacus. Born in Thrace, a region known for its fierce warriors, Spartacus was captured and sold as a slave to a gladiator school in Capua. He was trained to kill for the delight of the Roman elite. But within that slave's body burned the soul of a leader. In 73 BC, Spartacus led a daring revolt. Armed initially with only kitchen knives and spits, he and about 70 other gladiators massacred their guards and escaped. What began as a small breakout transformed into the largest slave rebellion Rome had ever seen, the Third Servile War. Spartacus wasn't just a brute with a sword. He was a tactical genius. His army, which grew to over 120,000 men, women, and children, was a patchwork of desperate slaves. He trained them, transforming shepherds and farmers into a disciplined fighting force that repeatedly humiliated the Roman legions. He used brilliant guerrilla tactics, such as descending the slopes of Mount Vesuvius using vines to attack a Roman camp from behind. In an act of brutal and symbolic revenge, after the death of his lieutenant Crixus, Spartacus forced 300 Roman prisoners to fight to the death as gladiators, inverting the roles of master and slave. For 2 years, he terrorized the Roman Republic. The man who was supposed to die for sport was now dismantling the most powerful army in the world. Spartacus's lethality wasn't just in his personal skill, but in his ability to inspire tens of thousands to fight and die for a cause that seemed impossible: freedom. In the end, Rome's power was overwhelming. Cornered by 8 legions under the command of Marcus Licinius Crassus, Spartacus's army was finally defeated. Spartacus died in combat, fighting to his last breath. His body was never found. The 6,000 survivors of his army were crucified along the Appian Way, a terrible warning to anyone who dared defy Rome. But the legend of Spartacus, the gladiator who made the greatest empire in the world tremble, became immortal. From the bloody chaos of a slave rebellion, we travel to feudal Japan, a land governed by a rigid code of honor, Bushido. Here, the sword wasn't just a weapon, it was the warrior's soul. And no one embodied the mastery of the sword like Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi wasn't an ordinary samurai. He was a ronin, a masterless samurai, wandering through Japan in search of enlightenment through the way of the sword. And his path was paved with the bodies of his opponents. He fought his first duel at age 13 and killed his opponent. From there, his legend only grew. Musashi participated in over 60 duels and was never defeated. His lethality was legendary, but it didn't come from brute strength. It came from a brilliant mind and an unorthodox approach to combat. Musashi was a master of psychological warfare. He frequently arrived late to duels to irritate and unbalance his adversaries. He studied the terrain, used the sun and environment to his advantage. He was unpredictable. His most famous innovation was Niten Ichiryu, the style of fighting with two swords, the katana and wakizashi, simultaneously. While most samurai considered this inelegant, Musashi saw it as a devastating practical advantage. It was like facing a whirlwind of steel. His most famous duel was against Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro was famous for his longsword, the drying pole. Musashi, in an act of supreme contempt and tactical genius, arrived late in a boat, having carved a wooden sword from an oar that was longer than Kojiro's. With a single blow to the head, Musashi killed his greatest rival. He used a wooden sword to defeat a real steel blade. In his later years, Musashi retreated to a cave and wrote The Book of Five Rings, a treatise on strategy, tactics, and philosophy that is studied by warriors and executives to this day. He proved that a warrior's greatest weapon isn't his sword, but his mind. Now we leap to the 20th century. Amid the industrialized chaos of war, a new form of lethal warrior emerged from the shadows: the sniper. And the most successful female sniper of all time was a Ukrainian history student named Lyudmila Pavlichenko. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Lyudmila, then 24 years old, was one of the first volunteers. Initially, they wanted her to be a nurse, but she insisted on fighting. After an improvised audition where she shot down 2 enemy soldiers, the Red Army realized their mistake. Nicknamed Lady Death by the Germans who feared her, Lyudmila became a ghost on the front lines, patient, calculating, and absolutely lethal. She spent months in the muddy and frozen trenches of Odessa and Sevastopol. Being a sniper isn't about frantic shootouts. It's about a hunter's patience and surgical precision. Lyudmila was a master of both. She could remain motionless for 18 hours, waiting for the perfect moment. She engaged in counter-sniper duels, hunting the German hunters sent to eliminate her. She won them all. Her official kill count is 309. That includes 36 enemy snipers. 309 lives ended through the sights of her Mosin Nagant rifle. Her lethality was so great that the Germans tried to recruit her through loudspeakers on the front lines, promising her chocolate and an officer's position. Her response? Keep shooting. Wounded by a mortar in 1942, Lyudmila was withdrawn from combat. Her fame was so great that she was sent on a propaganda tour to the United States and Canada, becoming the first Soviet citizen to be received by an American president. Lyudmila Pavlichenko proved that lethality has no gender. She was a student who became one of the most efficient predators in modern warfare history. If Lyudmila Pavlichenko was Lady Death, our next warrior was death itself incarnate in winter. His name was Simo Heiha, a Finnish farmer standing just over 5 feet tall. To the Soviet Red Army, which invaded Finland in 1939, he was known by a far more terrifying name: the White Death. In the Winter War, tiny Finland faced the crushing power of the Soviet Union. In less than 100 days, in temperatures reaching 40 degrees below zero, Heiha accumulated the highest confirmed kill count by a sniper in any major war. Over 505 Soviet soldiers, an average of more than 5 kills per day. What makes Heiha's feat even more unbelievable is how he did it. He refused to use a telescopic sight, preferring the iron sights of his rifle, because telescopic sights can fog up in extreme cold and force the shooter to raise their head, creating a larger target. Additionally, the sun's reflection on the lens could reveal his position. Heiha was a master of camouflage and Arctic survival. He dressed completely in white. He compacted the snow in front of his rifle so the shot wouldn't kick it up. He even put snow in his mouth so the vapor from his breath wouldn't give him away in the frozen air. He was a one-man army. The Soviets tried everything to kill him. They sent counter-sniper teams. They launched artillery barrages on his known positions. Nothing worked. He simply disappeared into the snow and continued to reap lives. Finally, on March 6, 1940, Heiha's luck seemed to have run out. He was hit in the face by an explosive bullet. He was given up for dead and thrown on a pile of bodies. But the White Death refused to die. A fellow soldier found him, noticed a leg twitching in the pile, and rescued him. He spent 14 months in recovery, undergoing 26 surgeries. When he woke from his coma, the war was over. Simo Heiha lived to be 96 years old, a quiet farmer who, for one brief and terrible winter, became the most lethal predator the world has ever seen. Our list so far has focused on individuals whose lethality was personal, measured in duels or precision shots. But our final warrior operates on an entirely different scale. A man whose iron will and military genius not only made him a formidable combatant, but also the architect of the largest contiguous empire in history, built upon an ocean of blood. His name was Temujin, but the world would know him as Genghis Khan. Born into a nomadic tribe and living a brutal childhood of poverty and violence, Genghis Khan unified the scattered Mongol tribes through a combination of relentless diplomacy and bloody conquest. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a nation builder who used war as his primary tool. Genghis Khan's lethality was systemic. He transformed the Mongols into an unstoppable war machine. His warriors were masters of mounted archery, capable of firing with deadly accuracy while galloping at full speed. They were disciplined, resilient, and absolutely loyal to their Khan. His policy was brutally simple: surrender unconditionally or face total annihilation. Cities that dared to resist were wiped off the map. Entire populations were massacred. Historians estimate that Genghis Khan's conquests may have resulted in the deaths of up to 40 million people, representing about 11% of the world's population at the time. His wars literally cooled the planet, as the destruction of cities and agricultural fields allowed forests to grow, removing carbon from the atmosphere. He wasn't just a barbarian. He was a military innovator who adopted new technologies and tactics from his enemies, such as Chinese siege engineering. He established a code of laws, the Yasa, and created a rapid communication system, the Yam. He built an empire, but the cement that held it together was fear. His lethality wasn't measured in one-on-one duels, but in destroyed cities and entire civilizations subjugated. He represents the terrifying apex of organized warfare, a man whose ambition and military genius redrew the world map with a blood-stained sword. Spartacus, Musashi, Pavlichenko, Heiha, Genghis Khan. 5 individuals from completely different eras and cultures united by a terrible skill: the mastery of death. They were products of their time, forged by the brutality of slavery, by a samurai's code of honor, or by desperate patriotism in the face of invasion. Their stories are fascinating, but they're also a dark reminder of humanity's capacity for violence. They show us that lethality isn't just in the power of an army, but in the determination, skill, and will of a single individual. They are terrifying exceptions that prove the rule, legends written in blood. And while we admire their skill and courage, their stories force us to ask, what drives a human being to become such a perfect weapon? Perhaps the most frightening answer is that, under the right circumstances, any of us could be.